Well, hello to absolutely nobody. Okay, so I guess I'll get started. Start reading. All right, so we are on chapter 4, 8 September 1888, and this one is the murder of Annie Chapman. So we're on 4 murders right now, actually. Mary Ann Nichols, there was Martha and Emma. Yeah, Martha, Emma, Mary Ann Nichols. Yeah, this is number 4. Wow. So the murder of Annie Chapman on the morning of Saturday, 8th of September, 1888, occurred on the day after the funeral of Mary Ann Nichols. They didn't waste any time. Wow. The interval of only just over a week between the 2 murders obviously caused a sensation. The fears imitated in the press reports of the Nichols murder of a maniacal lone killer at work in the East End streets were apparently confirmed when the details of this horrific new murder became known. Further areas of factual dispute also arose from this killing, notably concerning the items arranged on the ground near Chapman's body. Items that included, according to legend, 2 farthings and 2 rings. I have no idea what farthings are, whatever this means. Somebody let me know. The true facts in this regard are shown in the following reports. Hey, Deb. The first probable sighting of the killer by the witness, Mrs. Long, also occurred in this case. The details preserved in the police reports on the Chapman murder are as follows. The detective and first police officer on the scene at the Chapman murder was Inspector Joseph Chandler of H Division, stationed at Commercial Street. His report on the finding of the body, dated 8th of September 1888, follows the beginning with the file cover. Oh, no worries. Um, do you know what far things are? What I typed in there? What is that? It says, okay, so this is, I just started right now. Oh, thank you. It's an out-of-date money unit, a coin in England. Okay, so a coin, and then there was 2 rings, and this is the murder of Annie Chapman. So we're on number 4 now. Thanks, because yeah, there's some things in here I don't know. So the subject murder of Annie Sippy at 29 Hanbury Street, Spitalfields. That's the 3rd person now from that Spitalfields. The first special report plus submitted in accordance with PO 9th February 1888. I bit my tongue again. I was having a nightmare and yeah, I gotta stop doing that. Not like I mean to, and it hurts like crazy. So to Mr. Williamson, I understand Inspector Aberline is taking up this as well as the other murder con. Inspector Aberline is assisting H in making inquiry into this murder. He was instructed to do so this morning. So Commercial Street, Metropolitan Police, H Division. This is on September 8th, 1888. I beg to report that at 6:10 a.m. on the 8th, while on duty in Commercial Street, Spitalfields, I received information that a woman had been murdered. I at once proceeded to number 29 Hanbury Street, and in the backyard found a woman lying on her back, dead, left arm resting on her left breast, legs drawn up, abducted small intestines, and flap of the abdomen laying on the right side. Above right shoulder, attached by a cord with the rest of the intestines inside the body. Two flaps of skin from the lower part of the abdomen, lying in a large quantity of blood above the left shoulder. Throat cut deeply from left and back a jagged manner right around the throat. I at once sent for Dr. Phillips, the surgeon, and to the station for the ambulance and assistance. The doctor pronounced life extinct and stated the woman had been dead at least 2 hours. The body was then removed on the police ambulance to the Whitechapel mortuary. On examining the yard, I found on the back wall of the house, at the head of the body, and about 18 inches from the ground, about 6 patches of blood varying in size from a sixpenny piece to a point, and on the wooden paling, I think that means railing, on left of the body near the head patches and smears of blood about 14 inches from the ground. The woman had been identified by Timothy Donovan, Deputy Crossingham's, lodging house 35 Dorset Street, Spitalfields, who states because he'd known her about 16 months as a prostitute, and for the past 4 months she had lodged at above house, and at 1:45 8th she was in the kitchen. The worse for liquor and eating potatoes, he, Donovan, sent to her for the money for her bed, which she said she had not got, and asked him to trust her, which he declined to do. She then left, stating that she would not be long gone. He saw no man in her company. This is so strange to read. I don't want to bite my tongue. I keep doing it. Oh, it's like every time I'm in that fight or flight mode, my tongue is like just while I'm sleeping, it's just resting. My teeth are on it, and I just like that. Almost it's at least once a week. I'm surprised I have a tongue left, like, it hurts. Alright, no worries, Jacob Mama. Description: Annie Stiffy, age 45, length 5 foot, complexion fair, hair is wavy dark brown, blue eyes, 2 teeth deficient in lower jaw, large thick nose, dress black figure jacket, a brown bodice, black shirt, lace boots, all old and dirty. A description of the woman has been circulated by wire to all stations, and a special inquiry called for at lodging houses to ascertain if any men of suspicious character or having blood on their clothing entered after 2 a.m. Inspector Chandler. Respectfully submitted, every possible inquiry is being made with a view of tracing the murderer, but up to the present without success. Local Inspector Reed, being on his annual leave, the inquiries have been entrusted to Inspector Chandler and P.S. Thick and Leach CI Department. I would respectfully suggest that Inspector Aberline, Central, who is well acquainted with H Division, be deputed to take up this inquiry, as I believe he is already engaged in the case of the Bucks Row murder, which would appear to have been committed by the same person as the one on Hanbury Street. This was from J. West's superintendent. I think that's what that's supposed to mean. Hey, Anna. How many women died on that street? That's quite a few. Right now, I think we're up to 3. 'Cause right now, this is the 4th woman, and we're on, uh, oh my god, Annie Chapman. It was at this time that the inquiries into various suspects brought to police attention began. One of the earliest was Joseph or Jacob Ish Eisenschmidt, aged approximately 38 years, a butcher of 59 Elthorn Road. Sorry. His appearance is first noted in a Metropolitan Police report from Y Division, Holloway, dated 11th September 1888 by Detective Inspector John Stiles, commencing with the file cover. CO reference, divisional reference, submitted through H division. The subject is Doctors Cowan and Crabbe and Holloway. This information respects a Joseph Eisenschmidt, a butcher and a lunatic. What? Whom they suspect as being connected with the Whitechapel murders. How are you a butcher and a lunatic and he's not in prison? I don't understand that. Like, what? So this information respects a Joseph Eisenschmidt, a butcher and a lunatic, whom they suspect as being connected with the Whitechapel murders. That's weird. To Inspector Aberline. Received by me at 4 p.m. At inquest don't know. Fick directed to take up the inquiry at once. Metropolitan Police. I beg to report that at 10 p.m., 11th, Inspector, no, it can't be Inspector. So Dr. Cowan, 10 Landseer Road, and Dr. Crabbe of Holloway Road came to station and stated that Joseph Eisenschmidt, a butcher and a lunatic, I just don't understand. How is that normal? It's a butcher and a lunatic, a lodger at number 60 Milford Road, and he having left his lodgings on several occasions at various times, it was thought that he might be connected with the recent murders at Whitechapel. In company of Sub-Inspector Rose and Sergeant Seeley, I went to the above address and saw George Tyler, occupier, who stated that at 11 p.m. 5th, he met Eisenschmidt in Horsley Road, who asked him if he would accommodate him with a lodging. He took him home and he left the house at 1 a.m. 6th, returned at 9 p.m. 6th, left again at 1 a.m. on the 7th and returned at 9 p.m. Left again at 1 a.m. on the 8th and returned at 9 p.m. Left again at 6 a.m. on the 9th and returned at 6 p.m. Stayed in the house about 30 minutes. He then left to go to Tottenham, returned at 1 a.m. on the 10th, left again at 2 a.m., returned at 9 p.m., and left again at 1 a.m. on the 11th, and has not yet returned. I then proceeded to number 97 Duncombe Road and saw Mrs. Eisenschmidt, his wife, who stated that she had not seen her husband during the past 2 months, but he visited the above premises during her absence on the 9th and took away some clothing. She further stated that he was in the habit of carrying large butcher knives about with him and did not know how he obtained his livelihood. Hey, hi guy. Oh, I do too, Anna. Absolutely. Absolutely. I do believe it was a doctor. A lunatic and a doctor, not a butcher. Because you have to be schooled in the medical field, you know what I'm saying? In order to cut these women the way they did and remove parts, and it was done like an operation. Butchers can't do that. Not to my knowledge anyways. His movements being suspicious, I directed PC 376 Cracknell to keep observation on the house and to bring Eisenschmidt to station should he return for inquiries. I also directed observation to be kept on 97 Duncombe Road, Upper Holloway. I respectfully suggest that further inquiries be made by CI department. No description of band could be obtained sufficient to circulate at present. Submitted through Act Sopt H. A telegram has been boarded on the 12th, 9th, 88. J. McFadden. The detention of Eisenschmidt is recorded in an H Division report dated 13th September 1888 by Acting Superintendent John West, commencing with the file cover, Metropolitan Police, H Division, 13th September 1888. Hey, Jen. Oh, no worries. You have a good night. So, murder in Hannonberry, sorry. With reference to the attached, I beg to report that no new facts have been brought to the notice of police, expecting that a man has been detained at Holloway Station on suspicion, since removed to the infirmary, Fairfield Road. Bo, having been certified, holy, sorry, I bet my tongue is hard to talk. Bo, having been certified as a dangerous lunatic. A butcher, that's a lunatic, but yet he's still a butcher. He's still working. That's strange. Sergeant Thick has examined the man's clothing, but failed to find any trace of blood upon any of it. Inquiries are being made as to the man's whereabouts on the night in question. This man's name is Joseph Eisenschmidt, is a butcher by trade, but failed in business about 12 months since. His arrest was brought about through information received from Doctors Cowan and Crown of Holloway. Their attention had been called to him by a man named Tyler of 60 Milford Road, Holloway, who stated that Eisenschmidt who was his lodger, had frequently been absent from home at early morning. The adjourned inquest on the body of the murdered woman was held on the 12th and further adjourned till the 13th. Several witnesses were examined, including Leather Apron. And Leather Apron was Jack. The adjourned inquest on the body of murdered woman was held. I just read that. Wow. Inquiries are being made by Inspectors Aberline, Helson, and Chandler respecting the various statements made to police, including that of Dustman, whom it is alleged saw a man on the morning of the murder with blood on his clothing. This was the first person they seen with blood on anything, actually, that I recall. The next report on the file is from H Division, dated 14th September 1888, by Inspector J. L. Chandler, and relates to a piece of envelope found near the body of Annie Chapman. I beg to report having made inquiries at the depot of the 1st Surrey Regiment, North Camp, Farnborough, 14th. The piece of envelope found near the body of the deceased was identified by Captain Young as bearing the official stamp of the regiment, and stated that the majority of the men used this paper, which they purchased at the canteen. Inquiries were made amongst the men, but none could be found who corresponded with anyone living at Spitalfields, or with any person whose address commencing with two. The pay books were examined and no signature resembled the initials on the envelope. I made further inquiries at the Lynchford Road post office, and was informed by the proprietors, Summer and Thirkettle, that the letter was posted there. Also, that they had a large quantity of the envelopes and paper in stock and retailed them to any person. That was from Inspector Chandler. Here's another report on the two murders follows, dated 14 September 1888. This is by Inspector Aberline. The subject is murders in Whitechapel. Murders in Bucksrow and Hanbury Street, 31st and 8th. I beg to report that the man, Stanley, who occasionally cohabitated with the deceased, Annie Chapman, and referred to by witness as the inquest as the pensioner called at Commercial Street Station this evening, and gave a satisfactory account of himself, and will attend the adjourned inquest on the 19th. Inquiries have been made at the London Hospital and other places, but no useful information has been obtained. With regard to the Commissioner's memorandum of the 13th, I have submitted special report. A man named Edward McKenna is now detained at Commercial Street Station for identification supposed same as described in evening papers and special memo from CO this evening as having been seen at Haight Street and other places with a knife. This again is Inspector Aberline. Another report. So in a report dated the 15th of September, written at H Division, Commercial Street Police Station, Inspector Chandler gives further information regarding his inquiries into the piece of envelope found near Chapman's body. The cover, yeah, I ain't gonna bother reading the covers, they're pain in the butt. Hey, Kimmy. Oh, somebody gifted memberships? I don't like that I can't see that when I'm on StreamYard. Thank you to whoever did that. I'm sorry I can't see. Thanks for putting that up, Kimmy. I beg to report that I called several times at Mitford Road, Upper Holloway, with a view of interviewing Mr. Tyler, R.E., the movements of Joseph Eisenschmidt, but failed, and I am also unable to ascertain where he is employed. On calling again yesterday, I saw a boy named Briggs, who informed me that Mr. Tyler had removed early that morning, and he did not know where to. You got one? Oh, that's awesome. I don't know. Oh, maybe it was from, yeah, it could have been from another time. The boy was the only person in the house and stated that several gentlemen had called there for Mr. Tyler during the last few days. He could say no more. I called on Mrs. Grillinger, the person referred to in wife's statement, who stated that she did not know the man I referred to and that no person but the regular customers had visited her house, public house. I have made careful inquiries amongst Germans whom I know in this neighborhood, but failed to find any trace of Eisenschmidt having been seen in this neighborhood. I called at I called at Fairfield Road Bow Infirmary Asylum, where Ishmael is still detained. I saw the medical superintendent, who informed me that Eisenschmidt had told him that the girls at the Holloway had called him Leather Apron, and that he had said to them in the way of chaff, I am Leather Apron, and he supposed they have informed the police. He was a butcher by trade, but had failed in business. He had a few words with his wife, and he left her. He was now getting his living by going to the market early in the morning, buying sheep's heads, kidneys, and sheep's feet, taking them home to his lodgings and dressing them, then taking them to restaurants and coffee houses in the west end of town and selling them. And that was the cause of him being up so early in the morning. And that was the only way open to him to get his livelihood. Can you imagine selling buying them and selling them? Ugh. The superintendent would like for police to give instructions what he was to do with Eisenschmidt. I beg to add that further and whereabouts of Mr. Tyler to obtain further particulars from him. Also, other persons who are likely to give further details of Eisenschmidt movements of the dates of the recent murders. There follows an interesting report by Inspector Aberline dated the 18th September 1888. And this again is the subject of the murders in Whitechapel, and it's referenced to the papers. I beg to report that inquiries have been continued relative to the various matters in connection with the murders, including the lunatic who was detained by police at Holloway on the 12th and handed over to the authorities the same day. I just find it funny that so he was a butcher. Um, who's a lunatic. I don't know, I can't get over that. He gives the name of Joseph Eisenschmidt, and his occupation has been that of a butcher. He is now detained at Bow Infirmary Asylum, Fairfield Road, Bow, and from his description, he is believed to be identical with the man seen in the Prince Albert PH, Brushfield Street, Spitalfields, with blood on his hands at 7 a.m. on the morning of the murder of Andy Chapman. At this point in the report, there are two marginal notations. Seen, Mr. Williamson has been to see the doctor at the infirmary, and identification postponed by order of WT. Dr. Mickle, the medical officer of the institution, has been consulted with a view to Eisenschmidt being seen by Mrs. Fittymont and the other witnesses. The doctor is of opinion this cannot be done at present with safety to his patient. It has been ascertained that this man has been wandering about and away from his home for several weeks past, and when he left his home, he took with him two butcher's knives. He has been previously confined in the asylum and is said to be at times very violent. Although at present we are unable to procure any evidence to connect him with the murders, he appears to be the most likely person that has come under our notice to have committed the crimes, and every effort will be made to account for his movements on the dates in question. Now there's yet another report. Yeah, you should get an email. So a further report concerning the detained Agent Smith dated 19th September and in handwriting of Sergeant William Thick follows. Subject is the man detained at Holloway. The reference is the murder and the papers attached. With reference to attached telegram and report from Y Division, R.E. Joseph Ogdensman detained on suspicion of murder. I beg to report that on the 12th, I called the Islington Workhouse and found that Joseph Ogdensman had been removed from there to Fairfield Road, Bow Infirmary Asylum. I then saw Mrs. Ogdensman, his wife, at 97 Duncombe Road, Upper Holloway, who stated that they had been married 21 years. He is a Swiss and was at that time employed as a journeyman butcher. Then they then went into business at Poke Butchers at 59 Althorn Road, Upper Holloway, but eventually failed. Her husband then began to get very depressed and repeatedly stopped away from his home at night and remained away for several days. He has been in Conley Hatch Lunatic Asylum for 10 weeks and was discharged from there about the middle of last December and came home supposed to be quite well. He then got employment as journeyman butcher at a Mr. Marlet's High Street, Mary Lebone, and stopped there till Whitsuntide. He then left and has done nothing since to her knowledge. He professed to have had work but did not bring home any money. He has not slept at home for quite 2 months. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, he was found in a house in Caledonian Road and was charged. He was taken to Clerkenwell Police Court and remanded for inquiries to be made about him. He was eventually discharged. He then came home again and changed his underclothing and left again. I did not see him again, she then added. I went away into the country to visit my friends last week and returned again on Monday. I was then informed by my daughter that my husband had been home and took his shirts and collars away. Mr. Tyler, 60 Mitford Road, Upper Holloway, had been called during my absence and left a message for me to call him. I went there on Tuesday morning. I did not see my husband. When he left, he had 2 bone knives and his butcher's clothes with him. I didn't know, or I don't know, what has become of them. I do not think my husband would injure anyone but me. I think he would kill me if he had the chance. He is fond of other women. He used to frequent a public house kept by a German named Gerlinger in Wentworth Street, Whitechapel. He is known as the Mad Butcher. This report is unsigned. On the same day, Wednesday 19th September 1888, Inspector Joseph Henry Helson, J Division, wrote a report with reference to the 2 murders he was assisting with inquiries into. So this other report, R.E. Joseph Eisenschmidt, detained Holloway and put in Bow Infirmary Asylum, who is suspected of being the man seen with blood in his hands on the morning of the 8th. There's like a lot of groundwork, hey, Teresa. I mean, like when they investigate, it just seems like they investigate. There's so many different reports from all these different inspectors and constables and doctors and psych boards, and it's like, wow. Subject is the murders at Whitechapel and Spitalfields. Reference again to the papers. With reference to Joseph Eisenschmidt, detained by police at Holloway and sent to the workhouse as an insane person, I beg to report that from papers received from Y Division, it is shown that on the 11th, Dr. Cowan of Landseer Road and Dr. Crabb of Holloway Road called at Holloway Police Station and stated that an insane butcher known by them to have been confined to an asylum, but recently residing at 97 Duncombe Road and at 60 Midford Road, Holloway was not unlikely to have been the person engaged in committing the recent murders at Whitechapel. In consequence of this information, observation was kept at the address given, and in the evening of the 12th, Eisenschmidt was found and conveyed to Holloway Police Station. A telegram was received at 6:30 a.m. on the 12th at HD, stating that this man was detained at Holloway and P.S. Thick. CI Department H was as soon as possible detailed by Inspector Aberline to make inquiries respecting this man, but before he arrived at Holloway, the man had been removed to the workhouse as an insane person, and from the workhouse it was found he had been sent on to the Bow Infirmary in Sila. The inquiry is continued by the PS, and on the 18th, I went to the asylum and saw Dr. Mickle, the resident medical officer, and endeavored to arrange for Smith to be seen at the institution by Mrs. Fiddymont of the Prince Albert Public House, Brushfield Street, and other persons by whom a man had seen in the morning of the 8th, at 7 a.m., with blood on his hands, as a description obtained of Smith, and that given by the persons referred makes it very probable that they are identical, but the doctor was unable to agree to this proposal, as it might prove injurious to this man. He has, at my request, promised that, in his conversations with the man daily, he will obtain from him as much information as possible as to his recent movements and let me know the result in confidence if I call on him from time to time. Also, that should he be removed to another institution or recover sufficiently to enable him to be discharged, or to let me know at once. The clothing worn by Eidensmid when arrested is now in possession of the police, but apparently bears no stains or marks of blood. Inquiries will be continued with a view to find some person or persons to whom he was known and who may be able to throw some light on the recent movements, but at present no person can be found except his wife, and she has not seen him for 2 months. Holy, it's a whole bunch of run-on sentences like go, 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 go. They don't break. In a lengthy 15-page Metropolitan Police report from the Criminal Investigation Department, Scotland Yard, dated 19 September 1888, by Inspector Frederick G. Eberlein, details of his investigation are given and of the Nichols murder. So the subject is the murder of a woman unknown. Huh? With reference to the subject named in margin, I beg to report that about 3:40 a.m. on the 31st, as Charles Cross Carman of 22 Dubton Street, Cambridge Road, Bethnal Green, was passing through Bucks Row. Whitechapel, on his way to work, he noticed a woman lying on her back on the footway against some gates leading into a stable yard. He stopped to look at the woman when another carman, also on his way to work, named Robert Paul of 30 Foster Street, Bethnal Green, came up, and Cross called his attention to the woman, but being dark, they did not notice any blood, and passed on with the intention of informing the first constable they met, and on arriving at the corner of Hanbury Street and Old Montague Street, they met PC 55 H. Mizzen and acquainted him of what they had seen. Holy, so much. What they had seen, and on the constable proceeding towards the spot, he found that PC 97 Neal, who was on the beat, had found the woman and was calling for assistance. PC Neal had turned on his light and discovered that the woman's throat was severely cut. Thane was also called and sent at force for Dr. Llewellyn of 152 Whitechapel Road, who quickly arrived on the scene and pronounced life extinct and ordered the removal of the body to the mortuary. In the meantime, PC Mizzen had been sent for the ambulance and assistance from Bethnal Green Station, and on Inspector Spratling and other officers arriving, the body was removed to the mortuary. On arriving there, the inspector made a further examination and found that the abdomen had also been severely cut in several places, exposing the intestines. I don't even know who the hell they're talking about. There's no name. It says woman unknown, but before that it says the Nichols murder, so I'm confused. The inspector acquainted Dr. Llewellyn, who afterwards made a more minute examination and found that the wounds in the abdomen were in themselves sufficient to cause instant death, and he expressed an opinion that they were inflicted before the throat was cut. Ouch. The body was not then identified on the clothing. The body was not then identified on the clothing being carefully examined by Inspector Howson. He found some of the underclothing bore the mark of Lambeth Workhouse, which led to the body being identified as that of a former inmate named Mary Ann Nichols. And by that means we are able to trace. Yes, Teresa. The relatives and complete the identity. It was found she was the wife of William Nichols of 37 Coburg Street, Old Kent Road, a printer in the employ of Messrs. Perkins, Bacon and Co., White Friars Street, city, from whom she had separated about 9 years through her drunken and immoral habits, and that for several years past she had from time to time been an inmate of various workhouses. In May of this year, she left Lambeth Workhouse and entered the service of Mr. Cowdrey, Ingleside, Rose Hill Road. Wandsworth she remained there until the 12th July when she absconded, stealing various articles of wearing apparel. A day or two after, she became a lodger at 18 Thrall Street, Spitalfields, a common lodging house, and slept there and at another common lodging house, 56 Flower and Dean Street, up to the night of the murder about 1:40 a.m. That morning, she was seen in the kitchen at 18th Thrall Street. When she informed the deputy of the lodging house that she had no money to pay her lodging, she requested that her bed might be kept for her and left, stating that she would soon get money. At this time, she was drunk. And that's another thing. All these women are hammered all the time. They're always drunk and they're prostitutes, every single one of them. And all their husbands left them. It's like the exact same girl every time. Yeah. She was next seen at 2:30 a.m. at the corner of Osborne Street and Whitechapel Road by Alan Holland, a lodger in the same house, who, seeing she was very drunk, requested her to return with her to the lodging house. She, however, refused, remarking that she would soon be back, and walked away down the Whitechapel Road. In the direction of the place where the body was found. There can be no doubt with regard to the time because the Whitechapel church clock chimed at 2:30, and Holland called the attention of the deceased to the time. We have been unable to find any person who saw her alive after Holland left her. The distance from Auburn Street to Bucks Row would be about half a mile. Inquiries were made in every conceivable quarter and with a view to trace the murder, but not the slightest clue can at present be obtained in the course of our inquiries amongst the numerous women of the same class as the deceased. It was ascertained that a feeling of terror existed against a man known as Leather Apron, who it appeared have for a considerable time past been levying blackmail and ill using them if his demands were not complied with, although there was no evidence to connect him with the murder. It was, however, thought desirable to find him and interrogate him as to his movements on the night in question, and with that, the view searching inquiries were made at all common lodging houses in various parts of the metropolis, but through the publicity given in the Star and the other newspapers, the man was made acquainted with the fact that he was being sought for, and it was not until the 10th that he was discovered when it was found that he had been concealed by his relatives. I'll be right back. I gotta turn this heat down. So, on his being interrogated, he was able, however, to give such a satisfactory account of his movements as to prove conclusively that the suspicions were groundless. Suspicion was also attached to three men employed during the night of the murder by Messrs. Barber and Co., horse slaughterers, Winthrop Street, which is about 30 yards from where the body was found. They have, however, been seen separately and lengthy statements taken from them as to how they spent their time during the night and the explanations given by them. were confirmed by the police who saw them at work, and no grounds appeared to exist to suspect them of the murders. In the meantime, at 6 a.m., the dead and mutilated body of Annie Chapman was found in the yard of 29 Hanbury Street, Spitalfields, having been murdered in the same manner, the mutilations being of the same description, but more brutal, leaving no doubt that the same person committed both murders. The identification in this case has also been clearly established. She was the widow of a coachman named Chapman who died at Windsor some 18 months since, from whom she had been separated several years previously through her drunken habits, and who, up to the time of his death, made her an allowance of 10 cents per week. For some years past, she has been a frequenter of common lodging houses in the neighborhood of Spitalfields, and for some time previous to her death had resided at 35 Dorset Street, where she was last seen alive at 2 a.m. on the morning of the murder. But not having the money to pay her lodgings, left the house, remarking she would go get it. At the time she appeared the worse for drunk. The worse for drunk. From then until her body was found, no reliable information can be obtained as to her movements. It was ascertained that for the last 2 years she had occasionally been visited by a man named Edward Stanley, a laborer who resides at 1 Osborne Place, Whitechapel. With that exception, she was not known to be acquainted with any other particular man. Stanley has been found and interrogated, and from his statement, it has been clearly established that on the night of the 30th, he was on duty with the 2nd Brigade Southern Division, Hants at Fort Elson, Gosport. And during the night of the 7th, he was in bed at his lodgings from midnight until 7 a.m. on the 8th, an hour after the body was discovered. He is also believed to be a respectable, hardworking man, and no suspicion whatever is attached to him. The deceased was in habit of wearing two brass rings, a wedding, and a keeper. These were missing when the body was found, and the finger bore marks of their having been removed by force. Well, that's not what I just read. Hey, Joe Being Joe. They said that the rings were found beside her, same with a coin. The finger bore marks of their having been removed by force. Special inquiries have been made at all the places where they may be offered for pledge or for sale by a person believing them to be gold, but nothing has resulted therefrom. Searching inquiries were also made at lodging houses with a view of ascertaining whether any person had been seen to enter with blood on them, with a like result. The inhabitants of the houses adjoining the scenes of the murders have been seen and many called as witnesses before the coroner, but none of them heard anything to attract their attention on either occasion. No doubt the murders in each case were committed where the bodies were found. Bucks Row is a narrow, quiet thoroughfare frequented by prostitutes for immoral purposes at night, and no doubt the yard of 29 Hanbury Street has been used for a similar purpose. Several persons have been detained at various stations on suspicion, and their movements have been inquired into. Numerous statements have also been made and letters received bearing on the subject, but after the most exhaustive inquiries, no useful result has been attained. The inquest has been opened on both bodies and adjourned from time to time. Numerous witnesses have been examined, and both stand now adjourned. That on Mary Ann Nichols until the 22nd, and on Annie Chapman until today. Plans have been prepared of the scene of each murder for the information of the coroner, and are herewith submitted for the information of the commissioner. Inquiries are being continued in every direction in which it is thought information may be obtained, and no effort will be spared to elucidate the mysteries. I beg to add that the man, Eisenschmidt, who was detained at Holloway on the 12th and handed over to the authorities as a lunatic, is identical with the man seen in Prince Albert, Brushfield Street at 7 a.m. on the morning of the murder of Annie Chapman by Mrs. Fittymont and other persons. This house is only 400 yards from the scene of the murder. The man who entered had blood on his hands. This is confusing the hell out of me, because they're saying there was blood on his hands, and they're saying there was nothing on his hands, and then they said that there was coins and Annie's coins and rings, and now a piece of an envelope with a stamp on it that was found at the scene. And now they're saying it wasn't, that it was ripped off. Like, I'm totally lost. Ashton Smith had carried on the business of a butcher, but some 12 months ago failed in business. He afterwards became depressed and lost his reason and was confined in an asylum. Okay, so he wasn't insane. He lost his business and then went insane. Okay, so now, yes, he's an insane butcher, or is an insane was a butcher type deal. Got it. He was forever liberated about Christmas. Last as cured. Okay. But for some months past, he has acted very strangely, and for the last 6 weeks, he has been absent from home and wandering about the streets at all hours. When he left home, he had in his possession two large knives he used in his business. He is now confined in the Box Infirmary Asylum, Fairfield Road, Bow, and Dr. Mickle has been seen with a view to arrange for Mrs. Fittymont and other witnesses to see him, but the doctor thinks this cannot be done at present with safety to his patient. What safety if he's locked up? It's real nice to see that they still protect the murderers instead of the victims. As time of the greatest importance in this case, not only with regard to the question of identity, but also for the purpose of allaying the strong public feeling that exists. I think that's supposed to be allowing. For the purpose of allowing the strong public feeling that exists, I would respectfully suggest that either the chief surgeon or one of the surgeons may be requested to see Dr. Mickle, the resident medical officer, to make, if possible, some arrangements for the witnesses to see Eisenschmidt. An index to the Chapman murder file is included in the Home Office reports. This was dated the 25th October 88. And here's a list of contents. Yeah, but there's not really content. Whatever. Uh, there's wounds on body. John Richardson, Albert, Elias, this, that. I don't understand this at all. History of deceased 5. Students insane 6. Prostitutes 6. Public houses 6. Motive for murder 8. Stanley, a pensioner 8. I have no clue what this means. Like I said, they write very weird. And a lot of the stuff's misspelled. Here's another one of murder of Annie Chapman. I beg to report that the following are the facts respecting the murder of Annie Chapman on the 8th of September at 29 Hanbury Street. 6 a.m., 8th September 1888. The body of a woman was discovered in the backyard of 29 Hanbury Street, Spitalfields, by John Davis of the address, who immediately informed the police and Dr. Phillips that the surgeon was sent for, who stated that, in his opinion, death had taken place 2 or 3 hours. Examination of the body showed that the throat was severed deeply, incision jagged, removed attached body. What? The throat was severed, deep incision, removed from but attached to body. Huh? And placed above right shoulder, where a flap of the wall of belly, the whole of the small intestines and attachments. I have no clue what the hell that even means. It says the throat was cut, severed deeply, incision jagged, removed from, but attached to the body. Huh? And it was placed above the right shoulder. I don't understand. The whole of the small intestines and attachments. Two other portions of wall of a belly and pubes were placed above left shoulder in a large quantity of blood. Abrasion of head of first, uh, abrasion of head first, ring finger, distinct markings, rings or rings, probably the latter, on proximal of the same finger. The following parts were missing. Part of belly, wall, including navel, the womb, the upper part of the vagina, and a greater part of the bladder. The doctor gives it as his opinion that the murderer was possessed of knowledge from the manner of removal of viscera and that the knife used was not an ordinary knife, but such a small amputating knife or well-grounded slaughterman's knife, narrow and thin, sharpened blade of 6 to 8 inches in length. 9 September. The body was identified as that of Annie Chapman by John Donovan, 35th Dorset Street, Spitalfields lodging house keeper, where she had resided, and also by her brother, Mr. Fontaine Smith, 44, Bartholomew. The results of inquiries were as follows. 2 a.m., 8 September 1888. She was last seen alive at 2 a.m. on 8th of September by John Donovan, the deputy of the common lodging house where she resided. At the time, she was under the influence of drink and she had no money. She left the lodging house to get it so as to pay for her bed. I could never imagine living like that. You're an alcoholic, so you need booze. So you have to sleep with these disgusting men for like a quarter to pay for your bed at night and then go out and drink the next night. I mean, that is so sad. 4:45 a.m. on the 8th of September, John Richardson of 29 Hanbury Street stated that he went out and sat on the steps leading to the backyard to cut a piece of leather off his boot, but he did not observe the body of the woman. Why would you cut off a piece of leather on your boot? I don't know, this is stuff they say. What does that even mean? Did he literally cut a piece of leather off his boot? And if so, why? Who cares? I don't care. Um, he could just said he was sitting on the backyard. That's it. So he went outside to cut a piece of leather off his boot, but did not see the body. 5:25 a.m. on the 8th. I can't. That would have to be the 9th. These dates aren't matching up. So the murder was on the 8th. They're still saying at 5:25 the next morning is the 8th. No, it's not. Albert Kodosh of 27 Hanbury Street, next door, had occasion to go into the yard at the rear of number 27, separated only by a wooden fence about 5 feet high, and he heard words pass through some persons apparently at number 29 Hanbury Street, but the only word he could catch was no. Here there is a marginal note. Was the voice of the man that of a foreigner? 5:28 a.m., apparently still on the 8th of September. On Kadosh going back into the yard again, he heard a noise of something falling against the fence on the side next to 29 Hanbury, but he did not take any notice. He did not take any. Well, obviously you did because you just said so. Maybe he didn't go. They mean like he didn't go over there and look. 5:30 on the 8th again, Miss Long of 32 Church Street stated that she saw a man and a woman talking near number 29 Hanbury Street. She heard the man say, "Will you?" And then over here it says, "Here there is a marginal note. A foreigner." And the woman replied yes and passed on. She only saw his back and would be unable to know him again. She describes him as apparently over 40 years of age. She did not see his face. He appeared to be a little taller than the woman and, in her opinion, looked like a foreigner. She thinks he had a dark coat on, but she could not recognize him again. The woman was positively identified as the deceased. So then how the hell would you even know he's at 40 years of age if you didn't see his face? I have a lot of questions. Then followed the discovery by John Davies, as shown on page 1 of this report. A. The action of police was as follows. The inhabitants of 29 Hanbury Street were seen and the rooms searched. Their statements were taken as well as the inhabitants of the adjoining houses. B. An immediate and searching inquiry was made at all Commons lodging houses to ascertain if anyone had entered that morning with blood on his hands or face or clothes or any other suspicious circumstances. C. A special inquiry to find rings was also made at all pawnbrokers, jewelers, and dealers. Inquiry was also made into the antecedents and history of the deceased. E. Special persons who Accedents are attached were detained pending inquiries into their movements covering the dates of the 7th and 31st of August and the 8th of September. F. The particulars of other persons seen in different parts of the metropolis under what appeared to be suspicious circumstances to the persons giving the information upon which from the nature of the circumstances no inquiry could be made or circulated. G. Inquiries were also made to trace persons suspected whose address or particular respecting them given upon correspondence. These inquiries are being continued. H. Inquiries were also made to trace three insane students who had attended London Hospital. Results: two of them were traced, one's gone abroad. And then on the marginal note on the side it says one with a question mark. I. Inquiries were also made amongst women of the same class as deceased and at public houses in the locality. Up to the present, the combined result of those inquiries did not supply the police with the slightest clue to the murderer. The only indication of the direction to find the murderer lay in the evidence by Dr. Phillips, which was, in substance, that the individual possessed some skill in some anatomy knowledge, and that the instrument with which the injuries were inflicted was probably a small amputating knife or a well-ground butcher's knife, narrow and thin, sharp with a blade from 6 to 8 inches long. I just can't see it being a butcher. I think it's a doctor that's gone mad. If the evidence of Dr. Phillips is correct as to time of death, it is difficult to understand how it was that Richardson did not see the body when he went into the yard at 4:45 a.m., but as his clothes were examined, the house searched, and his statement taken in which there was not a shred of evidence, suspicion could not rest upon him, although police specially directed their attention to him. Richardson is a market porter. Again, if the evidence of Miss Long is correct that she saw the deceased at 5:30 a.m., then the evidence of Dr. Phillips as to probable time of death is incorrect. He was called and saw the body at 6:20 a.m., and he then gives it as his opinion that death occurred about 2 hours earlier, 4:20 a.m. Hence, the evidence of Miss Long, which appeared to be so important to the coroner, must be looked upon with some amount of doubt, which is to be regretted. The inquiry into the history of the deceased showed that she was the widow of a coachman named Chapman who died about 18 months ago, and from whom she had been separated about 8 years on account of her drunken and immoral ways, but her husband had allowed her 10 cents per week up to the time of death. She was then occasionally visited by a man named Stanley, who was known as the pensioner. He came forward and accounted for his time and gave evidence before the coroner. Some pieces of paper were found near the body, but they were accounted for as being picked up by the deceased in the common lodging home. Inquiry is still being actively continued in all directions where there is a probable chance of finding a trace, and further report will be submitted. Then down here it says a descriptive form relating to Annie Chapman is also included, giving details as follows. So her alias was Annie Siffy. Her age was 45. Profession or calling was prostitution. 5 feet. Wavy dark brown hair, blue eyes, thick nose, 2 teeth deficient and lower jaw, complexions fair, and marks or particularities. On person portion of an envelope stamped Sussex Regiment, dated 23rd August 1888. Black skirt and jacket, striped petticoat, crepe bonnet. Jeez, you both are having dreams. Okay, I'm gonna stop there because I'm on chapter 5. And so right now we're up to 4 murders. And if I read any more, I think my throat's gonna be real freaking sore. So this chapter, the next one is the Chapman inquest and police inquiry. So they're still talking about it. I just want to know. I know there's Marianne. Was it Marianne Kelly? No, Marianne Nichols and Mary Kelly, I think is the other one. Oh yeah, there's Elizabeth Stride. So that would be 5. 6 is Catherine Eddowes. Yeah, I think there's about 8. Oof, these are horrid. Yeah, the last one was Mary Kelly. Is that not her name? Mary Jane Kelly. Yeah, I believe that was the 8th victim. I believe. Yeah. So there's 8 victims total, Anna. And Mary Jane Kelly's was the worst. I remember that. Have you guys ever seen the movie called From Hell? It's got Johnny Depp in it. He plays like the lead inspector on the case. It's actually pretty good. It's pretty accurate, and it's what I pretty much believe what happened. It was a doctor gone mad. Holy shit, 9 victims. 10. What? I thought there was only 8. Mm, 10 victims. Oh, I keep forgetting to put the photos in the community tab. I'll do that right now. Okay, I need a breather. Oh, tomorrow I'll be back. We're gonna be me and Tistic Shell. She's now gone by Shilly. She changes her. I'm telling you, she changes her name like she changes her underwear, just like every freaking day. But at least she keeps the same photo, so I know who the hell she is. Tomorrow, her and I are gonna do a live together at 7 p.m. and it's actually gonna be about missing and murdered Indigenous women again. She knows one of these women. Her name happens to be Susan. Um, there's still no charges against the person who did it. The other one's still missing, and there's articles and everything else we want to go over. So we'll be here tomorrow doing that together, which I think will be a good idea. Hopefully, get something going. Somebody might know something, right? All right, you guys have a great night, and thanks for joining me. Bye.